Hello, this is Mark Favreau. I'm recording this video for for Computer Science 382. This video is for my individual project. This is going to be going over phone security and why it's important to you and what you should do for phone security. The reason I chose this is I work at T-Mobile. I get this question a lot, like some basic questions are like, how do I know what I'm doing is okay on my phone? How can I detect fraud or faulty things happening on my phone? Can my phone get a virus? Um, Other things like that are all very important to the phone itself, or well, important to you because you should know whether or not your phone is secure and what exactly information is even going in and out of your phone to the cell tower or to a Wi-Fi connection. Um, all that's very important to why you would want to know these things. So I'm going to go over the stuff that I know, some of the research I did going into the project, um, and other things like that. So basically, the basic principles to know how you're being secure on your phone versus insecure is generally, if you have an Apple device, they do really legitimately can claim their devices are in general safer. Um, they do make just up over half of all mobile devices out there in the world. Um, and they do a pretty good job with consistent software updates that are universal, and you don't have to rely on on a manufacturer like Samsung putting out updates specific for your phone that come at a different time than other people's other updates, where an Apple device is more secure because they do get more frequent updates in regards to security and other features to their devices rather than most Android phones, arguably maybe even the OnePlus brand phone. Um, but that would be just those phones would have that issue. The first way you got to be secure on your phone is the way that you'll be most insecure is by browsing the internet. When you're browsing the internet, especially on like an Android phone, if your phone's not up to date with the correct software and the correct version of Google Chrome, Firefox, or other web browser that's on your device, um, you're susceptible to pop-ups that may look like the page you intended to go to, but may in fact redirect you to a essentially incorrect website or something like that, where they're going to lead you on and essentially steal your information or ask you for other things to put in where you shouldn't. This mostly happens when you're doing online shopping because, hey, you're putting in your personal information and how you pay for stuff. So doing online shopping on your phone probably isn't a good idea. If you're going directly through, like, per se, the Amazon app or anything like that, I'd say that's a alright thing to do. But if you're going on Amazon, you want to make sure that if you're buying it through, not directly through Amazon, that is technically buying it through a third party, that you want to research what third party that is. Because I had somebody come to my work the other day, and they bought basically a brick that looked like an Android phone for $100, but the phone they thought they were buying normally retails for $1,000. So you can't get fooled by some of the advertisements out there for that. The next thing I would want to point out is the number one thing people have problems with is bad apps. So most every single phone out there automatically comes with a flashlight capability on it. So as I'll show you here on my phone, um, it's literally okay. I should probably turn down my brightness there. If you see it there, right here, this button right here will turn on your flashlight, and then I know this is probably annoying to see, but every single thing has a flashlight there. So that's that. And then another thing that you would want to notice with the settings here that I'm going to cover is you have your Wi-Fi, and then or you have a Wi-Fi icon there, most new phones, especially if you have T-Mobile, they won't have a data switch on them, which is actually kind of a good thing that they don't have a data off switch. I'll get into that more later. They also have mobile hotspot, which that also can be helpful to your friends and family too, if you have that enabled to keep their devices secure. So the next thing I'm going to go on to is, again, following up with the bad apps part, is many people don't know what to look for when they're looking for a bad app. Or basically, your phone, most phones all come with Android phones come with some type of a widget on the top there. That's what these things are when you hold uh, this highlighted thing right there is called a widget. There's a whole bunch of these available when you just hold down on your phone and on your home screen to rearrange your icons. You can typically find widgets for anything from like your battery percentage in a larger gauge instead of just having it in the small icon over here. They can be radically different from Android phone to Android phone. This doesn't really much apply to Apple phones, but Apple phones, if you download a flashlight app for your Apple phone, that's essentially, if you're downloading a flashlight app, a weather app, a app that promises to optimize your phone, increase the speed of your phone, clean your phone, or even many Bible apps or things like that, they oftentimes are much larger downloads than what would be normally required of a app that only does a thing like turn on your flashlight, which it can be probably a couple lines of a command code, as we're probably all familiar with. Not exactly how to turn on a flashlight on a phone, but the codes that they would write are pretty small and don't need to be like 150 or so plus megabytes that some of these apps are just to turn on your flashlight, even though your phone already has that function built in. Basically, these apps are all harshly malicious and constantly going through your phone and tracking every single thing you're doing on these, and these companies are basically like shell companies for a shell company for a shell company that's just trying to collect your personal information in order to sell it and then do other things with it, which are not very good. And so that's why when you download an app, typically if you download a game that's not a name brand game, like for example Clash of Clans, yeah, you can watch an advertisement and get a free thing, but the second you download that free, or you watch the free advertisement, you say, "Hey, I want that app." You download that app, and that app also has advertisements for other apps in them. Once you get to like that third layer of apps, those third layer of apps that also offer advertisements in them, oftentimes are very malicious and ill intent apps that run in your background and slow your phone down and sell your personal information and things like that. So I really do not recommend using apps that don't often have a reputable designer to go with them. And essentially, if it's a free app, that is identical to a app that's paid for, but like they basically rip off somebody else's app or game. Those apps are also very malicious and should probably be ignored. I mean, yeah, you can do it, but just be a fair warning that those apps probably aren't the greatest thing for you. And then continuing on, and also the next point I'm going to make is Wi-Fi is awful. If you're using your mobile device and going to your McDonald's Wi-Fi or Starbucks Wi-Fi's, all of those Wi-Fi's, you can never rely on the security from them, especially going through with this class, that a lot of things aren't kept up like that, and for their security aren't always up to date with the latest protocols and licenses and etc. essentially, if you go onto a public Wi-Fi that just needs like the password's like guest or something like that, it's quite possible that you just gave all your information to somebody else sitting in that McDonald's lot. I don't recommend it. I always recommend using mobile data because that's a secure connection to whoever your phone carriers, towers, and that data is essentially all secure. Um, Another thing I want to touch on is location services and location data. Um, this information is always being collected from your phone as long as you're on data. You could go in and manually turn it off, but you got to understand that your Google Maps, a couple other apps will not work correctly when your location services are turned off. Um, that's just an unfortunate thing. So you just got to remember if you're going to be driving anywhere or anything like that, you got to turn your location services back on. Um, Another thing I suggest is always locking your phone with at least 2 or 3 different lock methods. Because one, uh, facial recognition, I've essentially determined that facial recognition is the most level or standard security at this point. Me and my dad both can unlock my phone with my face or with our faces, even though his face looks nothing like mine. It's just like our eyes are the exact same distance apart. So that's more so what that goes off of. Always have a PIN or a swipe pattern or a very long password to protect your phone. I don't recommend using the apps that save your passwords in them because, like I said, random third party maybe stealing that information and then may or may not sell it later on when it's convenient to them. Uh, and anybody can post an app into the Google Play Store. I mean, some of them do require you to pay to upload to it, but essentially anybody can upload any app to the Google Play Store. So always be wary of that. Um, Another thing you want to do for phone security is you want to make sure um, you are using the most up-to-date web browser version too. You want to keep your apps up to date. You don't want to have Google Chrome from last year running on your phone, just like you don't want Google Chrome from last year running on your computer. They're just not as safe as running the most up-to-date version on your device. The last thing I was going to cover is VPN. VPNs can be very useful because not only do they hide your information, when you're traveling abroad, they allow you to access things that are typically restricted. Most other countries other than the US do restrict content that you can actively see as an individual. I mean, China does. They have the they have the Great Firewall of China, which totally blocks out content, but VPNs get around that too, the majority of it. Some of the VPNs kind of stink. Many VPNs cost money, but there are free ones out there. The free ones are rather more difficult to set up versus the more inexpensive ones. The VPNs are also useful, especially for you. Nowadays, everybody does their business through their phone. VPNs give you more security and privacy. So if you're using a VPN, or I would suggest use of a VPN for a business purposes, because you can more actively, securely connect to business-related connections to a server or something like that through your device, rather than just having the unlocked or open Wi-Fi connection connecting to your work email or anything else of importance. Also to note, some works may lock you out if you try to access your stuff with a VPN, so don't just willy-nilly try to access it while actually using the VPN. You want to probably talk to whoever's in charge of that if they have protocols for that, or maybe implementing one of those protocols for use at work for accessing work material outside of the office, etc. Also, another thing you can do, or as we probably would be interested in, because most of us here are either cybersecurity majors, IT majors, or computer science majors. If you are part of the administration, you may want to consider adding Android phones specifically because you can register them with a domain and you can restrict what kind of materials they can put on their phones in the first place, so you don't possibly risk the compromised um, different, like compromising their email work information and things like that. So that you would definitely suggest doing that for your cell phone or mobile device, which could be a tablet as well. Um, Thanks for listening. I'll be posting this here shortly. Today's date is 12/1/2019. I'm Mark Favreau. Thanks for your time.